What's up, lads? So, after rotating these units through survival runs, boss maps, and awakening grinds, and I feel like some patterns are really obvious once you've played long enough. And certain units just never make an impact past the early waves, and it's better to know that now before you sink materials into them, okay? So starting from D tier first, right? And in D tier, these are the units that I would honestly avoid investing in. Even if they look appealing early on, they fall off extremely fast. Buggy's Sorcerer Awakened is probably the best example here. It feels like it should be strong because it awakens, but the damage output just never catches up to the wave scaling. The same thing happens with Puppet Sorcerer and Gun Sorcerer. They have okay utility for the first few waves, but once enemies start getting tankier, they stop contributing. Painkiller Sorcerer in its base form is also here because it only becomes useful after awakening. If you're using the base version for anything beyond early waves, you're wasting slot potential. C tier. C tier isn't terrible, but these units fall into the usable only if you're really lacking options category. Overtime Sorcerer Overdrive is a good example. Cool concept, but the micromanagement just doesn't pay off consistently. Katana Sorcerer and Rope Sorcerer have the same issue. They can work, but require way more effort than the results justify. Units like Sorcerer Agent Christmas or Mask Sorcerer introduce utility effects that sound useful on paper, but there are better versions of those roles later. Panda tanking is amusing the first time you see it, but the lack of meaningful kill pressure eventually makes it dead space in your team. B tier. B tier units are genuinely workable for early and mid game, and don't get in your way while you're progressing. Sword Sorcerer and Boogie Sorcerer fall into that category. They get the job done, but don't scale into the late game. Curse Speed Sorcery is interesting because the silence effect feels important, but enemy patterns rarely make use of the debuff window in a way that changes the wave outcome. Urame Winter and Ice Manipulator are mostly here because of cooldown issues. They help control pacing, but don't secure kills fast enough to keep waves stable later. These units are perfectly fine to use while you build toward higher ranks. A tier. This is where units start to feel valuable and reliable. You can build actual strategies around A tier units. Gamble Machine, for example, can deliver extremely high burst when the RNG cooperates, and sometimes that's exactly what you need in boss phases. Sorcerer Agent Summer helps stabilize your economy in a way that's very noticeable across long runs. Reverse Energy Sorcerer is great for boss maps because its kit is tuned toward focus fire efficiency. Broom Sorcerer falls into that quiet category of consistently helpful, and I've ended up slotting it more often than I expected simply because it performs without supervision. S tier. Now we're in the strong units, the ones that remain relevant in late game waves. Mech Sorcerer Winter scales extremely well thanks to its puppet mechanics, and once it's set up, you really notice the DPS difference. Bow Sorcerer, and especially Bow Sorcerer Awakened, are excellent long-range damage options that keep your map stable. Painkiller Sorcerer Awakened is a very good general support. You get buffs, black flash interactions, and good speed all in one slot. Blood Sorcerer is one I used a lot personally because its AoE coverage and dot stacks can control huge wave clusters, even if the cooldown is slow. Jackpot Sorcerer falls into that same randomness category as Gamble Machine, but when the gamble goes in your favor, waves evaporate. Guitarist Sorcerer also deserves mention because consistent debuffing is easily one of the strongest long-term effects in this game. Curse Sorcerer's passive ability, Copying, makes some late maps significantly easier if you understand which enemies to target. SS tier. These units define strong meta teams. When you have one of these in your lineup, you're not just filling a slot, you're shaping your entire run strategy. Overtime Sorcerer is one of the best examples. The Black Flash damage spike can delete bosses extremely quickly. Miracle Sorcerer is the ideal hybrid unit. Generating income while dealing damage is insanely valuable across wave-based modes. Red Scarf Sorcerer is used constantly because of the attack animation speed, and it's also part of the evolution chain you need later. Curse Manipulator and Soul Curse, true, Both scale off kills and repeated hits, which gives them exponential value over time. Amplifying Sorcerer is just pure team synergy, boosting one unit so hard that it becomes your main carry. Sorcerer Killer Resurrected and Red Scarf Sorcerer Summer continue this category of units that reward tight team coordination and benefit from being in optimized builds. Triple S tier. At the very top, these are the units that define the current meta. When you have one of these in your lineup, you're not just filling a slot, you're shaping your entire run strategy. King of Curses 15 Fingers does everything. AoE, immunity, stability. Strongest Sorcerer and Strongest Sorcerer Awakened simply compress so much damage output into such a tiny window that bosses barely get to act. Soul Curse's Transfiguration gives you momentum the longer the run goes, which is basically everything in high wave play. Sorcerer Killer here has extremely high kill pressure and consistency. Shadow Sorcerer's Summoning Maharaga is what stabilizes whole wave clusters by itself, and Sorcerer Agent remains the best early economy unit in the game. If you want to reach late game smoothly, this is your foundation. Curse Manipulator, Possessed, evolves through kills in a way that just snowballs beyond anything else once the fight goes on long enough.